Hey guys, my name is Damian Haynes, and I say we get straight to it. So I'm sure most of you are already aware, but places like Chicago, LA, San Francisco, Seattle, New York, mainly any big city controlled by Democrats, is failing to enforce the law. They're being lenient on criminals and crime. They're not arresting them, not sending them to the maximum. They're often letting them go for petty crime. And this is encouraging behavior. I'm sure you've seen the videos where people are just storming stores and grabbing everything they can and running out, or the videos of them robbing trains. It's getting ridiculous. But this behavior isn't a new phenomenon. It's being encouraged. If you don't enforce basic level laws, people are going to break those laws. They don't mean anything. It's like weed. Weed used to be very strictly enforced, and now it's not really where weed laws to apply. And everyone jokes about smoking weed now. And it's not to say that weed is the same as stealing, but it's a good example to bring up. If you don't enforce the law strictly, it becomes more, people believe it's lenient and they can get away with it, and it becomes the norm. If you don't enforce burglary strictly, if you go out there, you steal, you get arrested, you get the hand slapped, you get handcuffed, you go to jail, people are going to steal. It's what you saw in California. It's what you've seen in these videos. And Portland's now facing repercussions. So Walmart is going to close 2 of the Portland stores and lay off nearly 600 workers. And their official statement down in this article from Portland Business Journal is based off, and I'll read it to you. The filing did not provide a reason for the closing, but a Walmart spokesperson said in an email the decision was made after a review of overall performance. We consider many factors, including current and projected financial performance, location, population, customer needs, and proximity of other nearby stores when making these difficult decisions. It's hogwash. We know why the Portland store is being closed. Portland does not have a good rap lately, for good reason, because they've been allowing crime, Antifa, and many other factors. All a result of Democrat policy, of course. But what you should hopefully remember is several months ago, Walmart stated that they may have to close stores or raise prices because of theft. And I went and found this article from ABC, which states retail theft at Walmart may lead to raised prices and store closures, CEO says. In an interview Tuesday, CEO Doug McMillon indicated that would be the case if prosecutors continue to have a lax approach to shoplifting crime, specifically organized retail theft. Each store location has security measures in place, but the other part of the equation is partnering with local enforcement agencies to hopefully correct the issue over time, McMillon said. Now, if places like California are not enforcing the law when it comes to stealing, then how do you expect stores like Walmart to make a profit? And they have to end up closing because they're not making a profit. They have to end up paying more and more to replace the goods that are stolen, and this encourages more and more people to steal because, hey, look, my friend Bob, he just stole a whole shelf and he got away with it. Why should I have to pay for these goods if they're not paying for the goods? It encourages the behavior because everyone deep down has that little devil in them, that little desire to do bad. And for the most part, most people have that under control. And then there's a small group of people who only have that under control because there's strict enforcement. Like, hey, I can't steal this cookie because if I steal this cookie, I'll get grounded. But as soon as you remove that threat of being grounded or spanked, you kind of like, oh, why am I able to steal the cookie after all? It's not really shocking to anyone who pays attention. It's why these cities are going downhill. It's because they're not enforcing the law. You can see in Illinois, for example, recently, they passed a bill where they allowed cashless bail for certain crimes, such as arson or kidnapping. And if you fail to show up for your court date, they're not allowed to issue a warrant for your arrest for missing your court date for kidnapping or arson or burglary. They have to request that you come back, and only after you fail to miss your after you failed to show up for your second court date, can they issue a warrant for your arrest. And it's no surprise to anyone then that Chicago has massive crime problems. And then the other thing we have to remember too is that these Democrat cities, these Democrat states, they ban and make it illegal to have self-protection. Someplace like, say, New Jersey, where it's very hard to have a gun, where it's very difficult to defend yourself because you're required by law to leave your home. So you combine all these factors together. One, they're not giving out the strictest sentence. They're allowing cashless bail, which I understand the bail system may need reformed. It's not fair for someone, say like Kyle Rittenhouse, to have $1 million bail when he's clearly not worth $1 million. Doesn't have $1 million. How do you expect him to pay the bail? Is holding him in court, in jail, till his court date, without making it official, just by increasing that price. It's not fair either. But if you're, say, caught on camera committing arson, or if you got caught kidnapping, you could be a danger to society, so maybe we shouldn't give you such a lenient bail. But my point is, by making all these crimes cashless bail, they get it back on the street, then you can enforce it. Goes with being lenient on crime. You don't have a armed populace, so they can't defend themselves, and they're not encouraged to defend themselves. So people are just going to stand by as they watch 7-Elevens, Walmarts have massive herds of people come in and steal everything and leave. And the last factor, and this all combines into this, is when this happens, the economy crashes in these cities. Stores like Walmart, Starbucks, Target, all these big retailers, the small mom and pop shops, definitely, who don't have as big of a wallet as Walmart, they all leave because they can't afford to stay open. And when they leave, you lack economic growth within these communities, and then you increase poverty. When you increase poverty, you increase crime, and it's an endless cycle of crime and poverty, and Democrats feed off of it because they rely on that for their voters, because they go out and say, hey, government will fix this. And it never does. It never does. It's ridiculous. It's just something that Democrats are going to have to keep forcing down your throat if you live in these cities, or just our throats in general, because they're trying to push it on the federal level. And with their talk shows and their movies and their news channels, they're going to continue pushing this idea that we should be lenient on this crime. And again, I'm not saying that you should have your life ruined because you stole a baseball card. But on the other hand, if you get arrested for stealing a baseball card and you have your hand slapped, you're less likely to steal a baseball card in the future and less likely to escalate that to ever-growing crime. Very recently, for example, there was a guy walked up in broad daylight in St. Louis and shot a homeless man in the back of the head. That comes from the lack of enforcement of laws. You wouldn't be so brazen if you were afraid you were going to get arrested and thrown in jail for the rest of your life for murder. But instead, he just came out in broad daylight and did it because he's not afraid of the consequences. You have to have consequences in order to enforce a polite and just society. Society is not just because everyone goes, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that. You have to enforce rules. In your household, for example, your kids come, they clean their room, they brush your teeth, they don't curse, they're polite with you because they know there's a threat of consequences. It doesn't mean you have to go there and beat them with a belt, but certainly you have to ground them if they're not listening to you. You have to have some amount of enforcement of your authority. And if you don't enforce the authority of the law of our livelihoods, you're going to have this increased crime. You're going to have those trains robbed. You're going to have these stores robbed. And when these stores get robbed in California, for example, or Portland, for example, Walmart's going to look to other stores to make up that profit margin, which means you're going to get increased prices down in the boondocks where there's no people because, hey, they can make money there and help supplement the losses at their other stores. So prices rise for everyone. So while unfortunately we have very limited control over crime in Chicago or Portland, it affects us. And we should be very vocal with how they're running things. So hopefully people inside those cities start to awake to it. For example, I mean, you've seen how many escalating cases you had in New York where people are being shoved onto the subway. That's frightening. The more we talk about that, the bigger of an issue it becomes. More people, and the more likely people inside of New York City demand action on these crimes and demand that there be justice. It's why we saw Democrats change their standing on defund the police. They went from defund the police to no, reform the police. We want to reform it because it wasn't popular with the voters because they saw increased crime when it came with the BLM riots and the Antifa riots. It's when you increase the pressure and you help highlight these issues, make sure you point it out. Hopefully some of the people wake up to it. It's one problem, for example, say with these big cities is that the voters aren't aware of it, or they're so desensitized to this crime that they don't really notice it as much. Because hey, if you're living out in the country or in a normal city that's not full of crime, hey, it's going to be shocking to you to see what's going on in California, Portland, Seattle, New York City. But if you're living in New York City and you're part of that woke mind virus, you're not going to notice it. So we have to try to elevate it as much as we can and shove it in their face so they don't forget it and they go, oh my God, why am I seeing so many videos about crime? Because your cities are ridden with it. And when they finally change their minds on this and they finally vote for something different, and we know they're not going to vote for Republicans, but hopefully they can vote for a Democrat that enforces the law, we'll have a change. We'll go back. We'll have de-escalating crime levels again, and these communities can go back to safer, and they can start having these economies recover as stores can reopen without the threat of violence, and they don't have to go 5 miles away to work at a store. They can work at a store right next to them, therefore saving money on transportation and help elevating themselves to a higher economic stance. So, anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time.